there. I'm trying not to notice you. Look at this glue here. This might actually be exactly what we need. Just pour a bit of this on here. I'm just going to get some gloves. Because before it runs down the hill. I'm just going to see what happens. Just take this binder medium and because it turns out that I used this glue or this pencil graphite stick, which is actually water soluble. Well, I suppose they all are. I mean, water can spread graphite around, but this one actually responds quite well to what do you call it, to water. Now I'm just taking this kind of a glue and using that to work. You see what's actually doing? It's kind of interesting. This glue is dissolving the ink and moving. I don't mind that. I mean, I actually don't mind that. That actually might be exactly what it needs. So let's see. Just keep going. What the hell? I remember actually doing that once, and you know, this wasn't even going to be anything, this drawing. And then I actually became interested in this story. I read in, it was in Nature, or it was a Nature newsletter that I subscribed to, talking about birds, especially corvids, which are crows and I think magpies, although apparently the Australian magpie is not a corvid, whatever that really even means. And how they, so this is a really interesting story, is they take, you know, a lot of buildings have spikes on them, metal spikes, to prevent birds from nesting, to prevent birds from perching or roosting or building their nests on top of big buildings in the city. And what birds have figured out, these corvids anyway, because they're bloody intelligent. And this drawing actually is all about how I'm a bit of a fan of the Australian magpie, but how these birds have figured out that they steal the spikes. And sometimes they actually rip them off the buildings and they use them in their own nests. And in some cases with a European magpie, and I'm going to be honest here, I didn't know there was such a thing as a European magpie. Wait one sec. The European magpie actually steals them and then puts them on their nests for the sole purpose of protecting their nests from predators. So if they've got little chicks. So I mean, that's kind of a fantastic story of these birds. I mean, I don't know where to put this story because they're literally using the mechanism that we came up with to keep them off our buildings. They're using it for the same reason, but completely subverting what we're trying to do with it. So, you know, how can you but not be a fan of the magpie after a story like that? And that actually, so this drawing, this female form, actually I'd already drawn very crudely a while ago as a, actually it was going to be for one of these iterative videos. I was trying to build an audience. I thought, well, why not just paint an audience? It seems much easier than trying to build a real one. So So I thought I'd just build a drawn audience. And so I was just kind of fiddling around with that, and this canvas that has a previous artwork on that's got this beautiful frame, which I've now painted over and drawn this female form. And then I just left. I thought, well, okay, that's not really anything, and not really anything, yeah. And I was sort of fine with that. And then I read that story. I thought, okay, I'm just going to draw the bird on this canvas, and just draw a bird, a magpie, is really a homage to the magpie. Just try and celebrate the magpie. So that's kind of what I did there. And yeah, then just thought I'd write spontaneously whatever came into my head onto this with ink, because now I'm exploring text in my drawings. I like text in my drawings, shall I say. I like the aesthetic of it. And then, actually I was talking to a friend of mine last night. Like I was feeling irritated. I guess this is a bit of like how the process works. Feeling irritated because I was trying to write this morning, and I felt the words just kind of were like a bit, but like, and then a friend of mine sent me a note. I spoke to him last night. He's overseas, and he's a really good friend, and he's you could say in some sense an umkara of sorts, and that idea is this. It's like a Welsh or Irish term, but he's a very deep friendship. And I was talking to him, and I felt like I was going on about myself a lot. And then he wrote me this note. I said, I think I went on too much about myself. And then I'm just going to read what he said here. It really was not like that. And I felt compelled to stick that at the bottom of the drawing, because that was better, what he said than what I could say. It was really not like that at all. A lot of how you're feeling, and I so resonated with it. So it was actually so good to hear, and left me feeling so boosted. Less alone, less outcast, less like a need to fit in. Much better than going down my own hole of self-criticism. It was actually beautiful and means so much more to hear how you are, Steve. You are one of the few people that makes me feel like it's okay to be here. And that's interesting, because funnily enough, just the other day I did this animation, which was really about, all living things, when they come into being, they perform because they really try to say, is it okay for me to be here? Look what I can do, look what I'm doing, justifying their existence to some extent. I feel like that sometimes, justifying our existence, performing frantically. To say, look, it's okay that I'm here. I'm not wasting space. I'm doing something valuable. So there's a bit of that. And obviously for some reason that was resonating on some level. So yeah, it was really interesting. And I thought it had to come to this drawing over here, which started off being nothing, and now I feel like a real connection to it. So, we'll see. I mean, the funny thing with an artwork or a drawing is you don't know how you feel about it. You have to kind of let it go and then come back to it. And then another good mentor of mine said to me, or actually she was talking about the work of Judith Mason, you got to trick yourself. She's an amazing South African artist who unfortunately has passed on. But she used to put her works that she thought might be finished just around the house, so that she accidentally encounters them, and so she can see them afresh. And that's kind of something you maybe have to do. Anyway. I'm going to pick it up and we can go and look at it outside. I'll just say off the bat, I don't yet know how I feel about it. But that's where it is right now. So we'll let that sit, I guess. So much for trying to be indifferent to the camera. Seems like once the camera's on, it has a certain... Well, the truth of the matter is, it's hard to be indifferent to it because I'm being observed. It's a completely different state than just being, literally being observed. Even though there's no one there right now. Kind of sneaky of me, just put these up. So there's no one observing me live. So actually, am I being up? The camera's observing me. That might be enough for now. Baby steps, maybe. All right. I mean, I'll just, I'm done. I'm now going, so whenever I will do work, I usually end up having to tidy, but because my space is so small that it clutters really easily. And remember to chat to you about the other day, some clutter becomes something else. It's not clutter, but some clutter is just clutter. Like I had to change some printer cartridges. That's clutter. I won't throw them out because I think you can recycle them. But yeah, that is clutter. I'll tape them together. Organize the clutter. Put it over there for now. Oh, and what's this? Yes. Yeah, so I mean, this just appeared, and I know it's something I'm trying to do. Is you'll recall the of Hearts and Bones, the stitched together paper sculpture. Or is it a sculpture? I'm starting to now see it as a choose a side, pick a side. Like, what side do I like more, that side or this side? Probably that side, actually. And then I might just want to mount it into a simple box. Just because I've got to do something, I can't leave it lying around my studio. So I thought I'd mount it in a simple box, and hopefully that will solve any framing issues that I might have. So the first thing I've done is, for those who are interested in the process, it's cardboard. And I think if you paint white directly onto that, it'll just get drawn in and it'll lose its visibility or impact. So you should actually put a layer of glue underneath it, which is kind of what I've done. So when I say glue, I'm talking about something like a binder medium, which just makes the material that you're painting on non-absorbent, seals it, okay, seals it. So that's what I'm doing here. Sorry, really boring actually. So, oh, just got snagged. Okay, that's good. So let's run through that quickly, because that's the most exciting thing that's happened this morning. I was walking. Remember I talked about snagging, most exciting thing. So I don't know if this is a good snag, but this is protruding out of my workbench, standing thing. Interesting, I've got two clips, fish clips, that are standing before it, and I literally snagged on it, so it changed my trajectory, or it interfered with my trajectory, and led to nothing. But I always hope that a snag like that, or snagging to something else, like a protruding piece of wire, is going to stimulate or be another project in the making. Something, because I do think the mechanism of how our brains change direction or how to do things might not be pretty, it might just be something as simple as a snag. Your brain snags, one idea snags into another idea, and suddenly you've got a new idea. So I toy with things like that, and I think, evolution, or the evolution of our own thoughts and ideas, might be more stochastic than we might want it to be. It might be more interesting, or it might be messier than we think it is. I'm a big fan of that. For some reason, I prefer that things happen by some happy accident or accidental encounter, and that's why I'm always talking about, like, you've got to untether yourself from things to bump into something novel and interesting. Serendipity. At our best, we can be serendipity machines. I'm gonna go wash this because, you know, dry brush, bad. So I've actually got to probably let that dry, and there's a couple of emails I have to write. I don't expect you to sit and watch me writing an email, but actually there's one that's a little bit interesting, I think, is I looking to, there's this a school in Canberra at the Australian National University called the School of Cybernetics, very interesting and dynamic school that I'd love to do some work with. But you know, it's hard to get on the radar. I've visited a few times, spoken to the people there, very good, really interesting people, great discussions, but you know, that's I call it a bit of a dance. You got to kind of dance and see what happens. Part of that is they give these incredible courses about cybernetics and leadership and technology, and I'd love to do a course to learn, but also as a way to get to know them better, or if I'm going to be completely honest about it, for them to get to know me better. So I thought the courses are very expensive. It's $3,000, over $2,000. Sorry, not three, like two and a bit. I can't justify spending that kind of money. So I thought I'd try and apply for funding. But to apply for funding, you got to have certainly for the kind of organization I want to, that I'm looking into applying with, because that's what's come up. You know, you've got to have a coherent project, right? Okay, and I would have to kind of weave a narrative into a coherent project, and it feels somehow forced, because at least the way I'm working right now is I'm almost anti-project. I'm wanting one thing to lead to another thing, but you can't put that in a project proposal. You can't. I don't think you can say I'm just letting one thing lead into another thing to see what it is that I'm doing. One of the reasons I wanted to do the course is because I think it's one of those things that will lead to another thing, and so I guess my not gripe, but actually what I'm most interested in is that I don't want to, even at this stage, be defined by having to define what my objective is or what my goal is. I don't have an objective or a goal. I don't have a product, okay? I don't have a product that I'm trying to sell. I'm literally almost anti-product right now. I'm wanting to work in the spaces between the products, between, you know, it's not a product. It's just activity. I'm just in my studio doing, just being and doing, and just letting, and not trying to define it at this stage. Even though ironically, I'm doing it in front of a camera. So that gives it a certain kind of materialization, independent of the things I'm making. So, but I don't want to think about what it is that I'm trying to get towards. I really don't want to think about that. I think it's possibly premature, but beyond that, disingenuous. It's actually possibly disingenuous. Like, I don't have a projected product, or I think the exploration is the product, you know, but how can you sell that? You know, how can you sell just so what it's one of the things that I feel that is where my voice is, because I mean, let's put it this way: if I try and explain what it is that I am doing, I usually have to come up with some kind of
concise narrative, just so I don't sound like an idiot at parties, really, or when I'm trying to explain the work that I'm doing. But I find, yes, it can be useful, and sometimes, and I always reflect back and say, how did that sound? How did that come across? But actually, it's not necessarily useful. What is useful is just the action of doing and putting things out and letting one thing evolve. Like my work's about evolution, if you really want to kind of, and evolution is not a predetermined or teleological program. It literally is one thing leading to another thing, randomly encountering variation and novelty, and then doing something, and then seeing where that happens. So it's incredibly iterative and evolutionary, and maybe that is the product, but short of that, it's hard to sell that. So that's the qualm, and it's ironically one of the qualms I've always had with science, or not science itself, the way science is funded. You have to have a very clear objective in mind. And sometimes it's extremely valid, but it is also not novel. It's not it's to some extent an applied approach to science, where you can't have the freedom just to explore, to encounter those interesting things that you will encounter if you're just left alone to explore. Now, I appreciate that, it's a luxury. It's a real luxury just to be able to explore. It's a privilege, all right? But I do think it's a privilege in a contemporary society that has to be supported. And actually, the same friend whose note I put at the bottom of my drawing spoke about, if you are in a privileged position to do this, you have to do it with, and I might get the phrase not quite precise, but something about with absolute responsibility. You can't take it lightly, this privilege of just being able to play. Because actually, a lot of artists and a lot of scientists are scientists who work in the sciences and who are professional artists who have to do this are dependent on this for a living. They can't afford to just play. All right, so I am in a very uniquely privileged position, and I'm very aware of that. But at the same time, I can't negate that. I can't undermine that. In fact, that is what I bring, and it's that element of play which allows me to do it. So if I don't get the funding, I don't do the course. It's not the end of the world. I'll evolve in different directions, but my life doesn't depend on it. It depends on me being an artist, yes, but it doesn't depend on me getting funded or getting taken up by a certain institution. I can go off in directions that are curiosity driven. There's that curiosity driven directions. So that is a privilege I'm acutely aware of. But I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm proud of that. Proud, is that the right word? No, I own that. Let's put it that way. I own that. Yeah. So that, where did that thought come from? I can't remember. We were waiting for paint to dry. Am I right? That's where the thought came from. We were waiting for paint to dry. Let's go find said paint. All right, I think it's dry. That's the good thing about being able to just talk, like just endlessly, like I seem to be able to, is it allows paint to dry very efficiently. Just going to squash a bit on the box and, well, really just move it around with a paintbrush. I mean, that's really, in fact, rather than moving around with a paintbrush, what's actually better, just for those, is you just put it, gloves are fantastic. I mean, there's really nothing you can't do without gloves. Put the gloves on, try not to get it on the suede jacket, and then I'm just going to move the paint around with my hand. Oh, a bit more efficient. And it actually feels really good. And I know I'm going to get on my jacket. I'm going to be really annoyed by it. Like, I'm really annoyed. But I'm going to try not to. Do you want to see? Just moving the paint around. One thing that will improve, I promise, is my camera setup. But you've got to have to be patient with me. I did actually buy a lapel microscope and a tripod that is high off the ground, so I can get a bit more, what do you call it, of a vantage. But of course, I have to remember in the moment of, I need to set that up. So maybe that's something I'll endeavor to do in the next little while, is to set that up. Maybe I might try and do it tomorrow. Use the lapel microscope, microphone, and yeah, let's do that. Where are we now? 28. You only have to bear with us for another minute. So just enjoy the sound. You can actually enjoy the sound of paint being put down, because it's actually one of those, you know, think of it as an ASMR. Oh no, you see, I did get paint on my jacket. So annoying. Okay. Do I do anything about it? Yes. I take it off, get some paper towel. All I do is, of course, spread the paint, but you know what? I think I've actually got it off reasonably well enough. Oh, making quite a mess. Matter is not one whit, it tells ya. Sorry. I should apologize. You need to apologize. You're going to take, you know, sometimes slip into weird accents, and actually also quite weird videos if you go look at my YouTube channel. So this is the same me, you know. There's many versions. There's many versions. They're all sane. But, you know, definition of sanity shifts a little when you enter this space. That's all. See, much quicker than a paintbrush. Let's get some more. Right, cracks there. And I don't want to wreck the box, which I've just sort of done. I haven't. I think it'll be all right, but it's definitely a bit more fragile than I thought it was. Anyway, that's fine. Let that dry, and I'll glue the back of it. And hopefully this is just to kind of, as a way of holding the paper sculpture. Maybe even be the way it gets displayed, I don't know. We'll see. Okay. That's me, all right? I'm just going to try and switch this off without getting too much paint on it.